Hi, I'm Anya, also known as Meppity, and today I'm going to briefly go over how I animated this walk cycle of a sheep. Now, this is by no means a tutorial. This was literally my first time animating any four-legged creature, let alone specifically a walk cycle of one. This video is more for myself than anything, as a marker for how I approached this project at this time. I'm curious to see how my techniques will change over the months and years. Will I become more technical as I build on my knowledge of anatomy and mechanics, or will I keep with my more organic, straight-ahead, wing it approach? To preface, this was an assignment for my 2D animation class, and at first, I was absolutely dreading it. My biggest weakness is anything that walks on more than two legs. So, I started out with the advice my teacher had given, and though super helpful in the long term, it was very technical and rather overwhelming for me, someone who has minimal knowledge of non-human anatomy. On my first pass, I was focusing on key poses. In general, I recommend that for several reasons. It helps keep your shapes consistent, ensures you hit all the important beats, and prevents you from losing track as it sort of predetermines how many frames you'll be animating. However, for me on this occasion, there were too many things going on to be concerned about that. Plus, digitigrade legs, animals that walk on their toes, look pretty darn different to plantigrade legs, animals such as humans that use the whole foot. So I couldn't fall back on my pre-existing knowledge so much. As I was ham-fistedly roughing out this sheep, my iPad crashed. 4 hours of work, completely gone. At first I was upset, but this was a blessing in disguise. I had had my practice run and it looked awful, so now I've been given a chance to try again, and this time using my own approach. After a 4-day cooldown of not looking at anything of the ovine variety, I finally summed up the courage to give this another go, and, well, it turned out much better, if I do say so myself. I'm going to go through my approach step by step. By the way, it was made entirely on my iPad Pro with Procreate. Prior to any of the animation, I practiced drawing sheep a couple times. The main thing is studying the skeleton, then breaking down and simplifying the forms. I looked up skeletons in different poses to kind of get a gauge on what bits move and by how much. I then looked at regular photos of sheep to figure out where the biggest masses are and very generally how muscles and the fat sits. My main conclusion was that sheep are pretty top-heavy with a straight back, and with such skinny legs it's as if the flesh sits directly on top of the bone. Also, secret, I picked animating a sheep because if all else failed I could make it ridiculously woolly to cover up my mistakes. After all that, I drew a rough sketch of a sheep, marking the bone structure of the legs, spine, and rib cage. I set this as my background as a guide for sizing to minimize fluctuating proportions. I also placed the horizontal guidelines to indicate where the back legs go. Next, I picked out reference footage. I couldn't find anything I liked online, so I used a video taken by me at home. This was also not ideal, but anyway, I used this sheep here as my main guide. Some bits are hidden, but I made it work. In the spirit of key poses, my first frame was of just as a front leg made contact with the ground. I drew the legs closest to the viewer in green, the legs further away in red, and the rest of the body in blue, all grouped but in separate layers so it would be easier to make any changes later. For the sketching phase, I like to use the Narrandor pencil as it's clean but still has that sketch feel. I then framed through the reference until I got to a new key pose, which happened to be one of the back legs contacting the ground. I repeated this process until I had a full 7-frame cycle. A few frames down though, I moved some of my layers. See, to keep things lined up, I started off as if the sheep would actually walk off the frame, so the feet planted on the ground stayed in the same spot in the next frame, if that makes sense. However, this meant I wouldn't loop, so I moved everything to where the shoulder blades and hips were anchored. Now the feet look as if they're on a treadmill. I then added breakdowns, making my 7-frame cycle 14 frames. At this point, I added the body. I honestly don't know what my approach was here, but I kind of abandoned the reference footage and did my own thing. I began with the high and low points of the head. Sheep seem to strut, kind of like birds, so I made the head bob down whenever the front legs were furthest apart. I used a circle because 1, I hadn't decided what shape the full head would be, and 2, because it's easier to keep consistent. When breaking the movement of the head down further, I treated it as if it were a bouncy ball, but without squash and stretch. I then did something similar with the rear end, making the high points when a leg was upright. There's less movement on the back end though, as it's more grounded than the head. Now I started filling in some of the blanks, but I got bored so quickly that I just went straight into colour. I coloured the legs first, making the closer ones a lighter grey than the further legs to make a sense of depth and to help differentiate them. This was done with the tinderbox brush in the inking section for those curious. I then did the body with Pandani, also in the inking section. I made sure to add mass to the tops of the legs and to emphasize like the fluffiness with the nature of the brush. It was mostly details such as the tail, ear and face at this point. I can't be bothered to go into too much depth, but the main thing with the tail and ear was to consider the principles of overlap and follow through. I then added some shading and texture to make the piece pretty. There's a lot of extra little factors that I kept in mind throughout the process, mostly in reference to the 12 principles of animation, but if I discussed everything that I was taking into consideration, then we would be here for hours. And voila, there we go, a fully animated sheep. I hope you found this sort of useful and an insight into my thinking process. I know it's by no means perfect, and the style I chose isn't very exciting, but I ended up really enjoying making this. I can finally check quadrupeds off the list of things I'm no longer scared to draw. Okay, well that's a lie, cats and dogs are a whole other demon I'll need to face someday, but I'm getting there. For now, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video, leave a comment down below, and most importantly, subscribe! I make all kinds of art-related videos every few weeks. Hopefully, once I'm done with Zoom University, I'll be more consistent with my uploads. I have a bunch of half-finished content waiting to be edited and uploaded. Why not also follow my Instagram at Meppity and Meppity? Yes, I changed my usernames last month, RIP Anya Arts. You shall be missed. Meppity is for more polished work, whilst Meppity is for more random sketches. And how about supporting me on Patreon? For $4 a month, you get to watch my videos early. You also get exclusive access to some other bits and bobs, including my CalArts portfolio, and you get unlimited access to audio critiques from me. People have been finding this especially useful for portfolios and so on. A huge thank you to my current patrons: Amanda, Andrew, Lena, Meep, Miss Val, Murmur, Nithya, Noah, Pastoracola, Sam, Suze, Tyler, and Seneca. I love and appreciate every single one of you. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you soon. Bye! This video isn't 10 minutes long yet, so here's some bonus footage of me drawing some outfits for Janie.